G'day everyone. For today's vlog, I am going to be walking you through the great houses from Fragged Kingdom. So we may not have enough time to go through all of the houses, but because I want to go into this a little bit deeper than normal, but we'll at least try and get through as many as we can this time around, and then I could do a follow-up vlog for the rest of them. Okay, so I don't want to jump into too much of the Fragged Kingdom lore, but I'll give you like a tiny little primer, and then also the two books that I'll be walking you through. Actually, it's pretty much I'm going to be walking you through a lot of the lore from the Arcane Bay. I'm going to be reading through sections and then sort of expanding on that, and hopefully giving you guys some good fuel for your own games or to make some interesting characters. Okay, so if we jump into the Fragged Camp, the core Fragged Kingdom book, we can have a look at the map. Okay, so this here is the continent of Catlin, and this is a very large continent. Okay, so think about like this is like the size of Africa. Okay, it's pretty big. And this here, this image on the right, is how the continent used to be, and then this is post the Druidic War. And what happened is that these all of these different nations were unified over a very long period of time through war and diplomacy. So you had basically from these lower houses down here kind of went up and unified all the way up, and you got all of this, basically all of this got unified. The only places that didn't get unified into the King's Alliance, which is what this this empire came to be known, was in the Whispering Jungle. We had some druids and also some worshippers of the All-Being. Basically, a lot of the outcasts and the misfits from the Empire were sort of driven up north into the Whispering Jungle. And then down here in the south, you had the Bloodstone Desert and the White Expanse. You have lots of Legion tribes down here. Okay? But all the rest of this, they were all unified. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through the houses, and we can explore sort of the history of the houses, get a sense of their tone, their characteristics, and the roles that they played within the Empire, and then what happened during the war, and we're going to like touch on, you know, who their leaders are and stuff like that, okay? But I forgot, there's one more important image to have a look at here. Is so in Pole's Rest. So this is this little spot down here where Fragged Kingdom starts. You know, the Empire was all wiped out pretty much until pushed all the way back down here. And this is Pole's Rest. You can see just this section here, and all these little shields showing the heraldry of the different houses, you know, who's running what place. And this one here just shows you a little bit more, because you have a couple of the multiple houses sort of sharing a little bit more in some of the bigger towns and cities, especially for Stronghold, which is the capital here. The other one that I think might be worth looking at. So, let's have a look. Yep. Okay. So this is the other map. So in the Arcane Bay, you've got the section called Possible Futures, and this is showing what would happen many years after the default started setting and the houses have all spread out among the region and sort of claiming different sections, and they've split into two different groups. So you have the King's Alliance, which involves these houses, and then the Reformers, which involve these houses here. So if you're wanting to do a much more political game, whereas the default Fragged Kingdom setting is much more sort of exploration focus, you know, going out there and starting up new towns and villages and stuff like that. This would be a much more established area. I would use this map for that. And if you're wanting to do like grand political styled game, I would actually go a pre-Druidic war and just do this one. Okay, cool. But let's jump into the details of the different houses, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to read out the sections here, and then we're going to talk through it. I know I'm just doing a giant big lore dump, but I'm not sure. I think this is the best way to do it. Cool. Okay, so let's have a look at forgive my pronunciation if it shifts a little bit. Okay, Apollonios. Apollonios. Okay. Cool. Okay. The family head is the Hierophant Seti Apollonios. He is the Count of Hertshire, and he is a Tolatal. Okay. Apollonios priests are an interesting lot, with their ragged animal skin cloaks, hand-carved totems, muscular builds, and unkempt hair. They give us a glimpse into how we worshipped the gods when civilization was in its infancy. But is this a healthy thing? It is not if we are no longer children, but it is if we are in need of a theological reset. Just as long as the goal is not to stay there. Civilization, the great gift of Pole, is to tame not only the world, but also ourselves. Devadia Script, Theological Scholar. Okay, so Apollonios, if we have a look at the old map, so that is right there. And, cool. Okay, the Kingdom of Apollinos was always a wild land filled with some of Acheron's most rugged and inhospitable terrain. It was also devoid of any significant natural resources or trade routes. While it was not an impoverished kingdom, its natural barriers led many of its inland people to go many generations without meeting an outsider. This created a parallel culture within the land, where those of the coastal cities would live lives in a similar fashion to those in the wider alliance, while those who lived inland maintained traditions that had died out in all other lands. As the original owners of the saga of Mon, it is well known that many eternal priesthood traditions originated from this wild land and were adopted and disseminated by the other great houses during the formation of the King's Alliance. Many of those early traditions were primal in nature and were slowly tamed and made more palatable by the priesthood. But Apollonios priests have always had a slightly rougher side, and these ancient traditions have enjoyed a resurgence of popularity after the Druidic War, as people have begun to question the religious establishment and their total rejection of Neph. It is rumoured that the house of Apollonios secretly owns a saga of Neph. If such a thing were to exist, it would have massive theological implications for the eternal faith. But this is something that the Hierophant Seti strongly denies. Seti is an elderly Tolatal with long grey hair and milky white blind eyes. But despite his physical weakness, his strong personality coupled with the unique religious influence of his priests has ensured the prosperity of his house. The priests of Stronghold, and especially Exiocolto, High Priest of Pole, are deeply suspicious of House Apollonios. They look down on them as primitives and see them as a potential threat to their religious influence. Some even suspect that they are allies of the Druids or the dragon Langorum. Cool. Okay, so let's walk through some of this and how these guys fit in. Okay. So if we have a looking at Apollonios, we can see that they reside here. Okay? They are at Hertshire primarily. And the thing with them is back in the day when, the alliance was forming, these guys were pretty secluded. Lots of mountain ranges around the edges of their kingdom. Kept them fairly isolated. And this is back before the rise of the King's Alliance and a more primitive stage of the world of Acheron. And these guys were incredibly religious, okay? But in a slightly wild, less civilized sort of state. So their take on all of the eternal gods would be a little bit rougher, okay? A little bit more primitive, and I'm going to use the word brutish, but I mean just more natural, less polished, less civilized, okay? So I could imagine, possibly human sacrifices or some sort of, warfare or blood rituals might be attached with some of them. A little bit more comfortable with death and the suffering and force, okay? But then as the King's Alliance took them over and they kind of assimilated some of them into their culture, their religious takes were so strong, and especially because they were the original owners of a saga of Mon. So these are like holy books that religion, basically the eternal religion, deprives lots of its practices from, or the alchemical magic from. And because Mon was the creator of all of the other gods, they sort of shows the influence that they had. So over time, those on the edge of their old kingdom became, fairly civilized, but the ones in the middle were always a little bit rougher. Then the Druidic War came, and you sort of had this questioning of like, oh wow, the established order failed us. They rejected Neph. Maybe Neph shouldn't be rejected. Maybe that's why we suffered, because we didn't include Neph in the eternal priesthood. So it's sort of those sorts of questions, and that's where you get Apollonios is sort of rising in religious influence. Okay, so I really like Apollonios. I think they're an interesting house. A good opportunity to have some sort of crazy wild priests in a game, or a rougher edge to some of the religious takes. Cool. Okay, so that's Apollonios. Let's have a look at the next house. So let's have a look at Attaway. So Attaway is here, and we can have a look at them. So you can see that the Attaway house is just down here. They've got the shell and the squid on their heraldry. So obviously there's a bit of a tie to these other houses here, which we'll cover later. Okay, so that's them just here. Sort of a great house that's a blending of two other houses. Okay, so Attaway. The family head is Lady Vimbo Attaway, and she is a remnant. They are a dirty and odd people, but their funny bubble-shaped wagon homes and flexible ways will do them good in this new world. Jacob Glass, Lockdale innkeeper. When the Salt King Shikango Dustkraken was driven off the Dustkraken Isles, so this is the Dustkraken here, by his sister Anatolia and I'm just going to push through these names, say them with confidence. Chitenia. He took his army south and stole the lands of Atta from the kingdom of Tequanus. It did not take long for the unified neighbouring kingdoms of Valdis, Sigmund, and Burdragon to attack back against the pirate king and force him into submission. Facing imminent death, the banished Salt King did the unthinkable and offered to betray his homeland, which was not yet part of the king's alliance, in exchange for Atta. Eager to claim credit for finally uniting the continent, King Coaxioch II of House Catla accepted the deal. Atta would be given to Chicago after the Daskraken Isles were brought into the alliance. The armies that were gathered in Atta were redeployed using Chicago and Aquinas ships and moved through secret paths to strike against the kingdom of Daskraken. After the kingdom fell, the ambitious Chicago sought to claim dominion over Daskraken and Atta, but this was not permitted. On his return to Atta, Chicago was assassinated, and his eldest son was married to a Aquinas lady, forming the new great house of Attaway. The kingdom of Attaway was a cultural mixed bag, maintaining many traditions from their Daskraken and Aquinas heritage, plus a few unique to their lands. With pirates to the north, desert raiders to the south, the people of Attaway developed a flexible approach to land ownership. Most Attaway borderlands were labelled as arms land and were owned and managed by the military forces that secured them. As this land would inevitably be taken from them and later reclaimed, the people who occupied them lived in mobile or lightly constructed homes and farmed roaming animal herds. Lady Vimbo Attaway, matriarch of the house, runs a small logging settlement north of the Spirit Wood and is ever ready to move her people out of Pole's Rest. Vimbo wishes to reopen the northern ethereal gates passageway through the Grave Mountains, as she does not wish to go near the hostile house Daskraken, who resides in Stronghold and along the River of Knowledge. Okay, so basically what you had happen here is you've got Daskraken, which is a very wild and rebellious kingdom, wasn't yet brought into the king's alliance, so the rest of this is all united. And the Salt King took the land of Atta here. So he was about to get crushed, as a bunch of neighbouring armies all were about to attack him. But then he did the unthinkable. He betrayed his own people, and he swore fealty to the king's alliance and guided ships and armies into the Daskraken Isles. So he basically helped conquer this. And the Salt King was all like, okay, well, this is my land and this is my land. But when he gets back, he's killed and by an assassin, and his son takes this land, and then another relative takes the Daskraken lands up here. And the son here marries a nobility from Aquinas over here, and they form this new kingdom, who is heavily defined by sort of a clash of two different cultures, and they turn into a very mobile people. So if we have a look at where they reside in Pole's Rest, so they are not a very big great house. So you're pretty much just looking at here. So there's a small group of them, and they're quite keen to sort of expand up north. Okay, cool. Let's have a look at the next one is Badoof. So, okay. So this here is Badoof, a little sword on there, and they were up here, in the north. Cool. Let's go through it. So, sorry, I think I'm going to cough. Oh, watch it. It'll come out later. Okay, the family house, the family head is Count Itzul Badoof, and he is a Toladal. You will only ever underestimate a Badoof Toladal once. Before you know what's happening, the cunning little bastard will get inside your guard and stab your knees out with their short sword. Remus Rubus swordmaster. House Bardulph is an oddity among the great Toladal houses, as they place a strong emphasis on personal martial power and physical skill. All Bardulph children are trained in both sword and bow from a young age, and are taught to always carry a secret blade. The Bardulph style of fighting seeks to maximize the advantages of their small stature and agility, while exploiting their opponent's size and any delusions of so-called honourable combat that they may hold. They were a small northern kingdom when they were forced to join the King's alliance, but their martial culture allowed them to quickly grow through the subjugation of their violent neighbours. For a long time they were rivals with House Rubus, but constant struggles against the monsters from the northern Whispering Jungle led to the two houses becoming close allies and friends, a bond of camaraderie that remains strong to this day. Count Itzel Bardulph is a formidable Tolatl, with striking dark scar-covered skin and an intense one-eyed glare. He was given the near impossible task of securing the eastern Bloodstone Desert Pass against the Drasong Twy raiders, a job that he has almost perfectly performed. So successful has he been that he currently plans to raid the raiders while simultaneously turning his home city of Northborough into a fortress. But Count Itzel Bardulph's sharp tongue that has earned himself many enemies in court. Pronounced that wrong. But Count Itzel Bardulph's sharp tongue has earned himself many enemies in court. He is also prone to disregarding the instructions of the Regency Council, choosing instead to rely on his own wisdom. One day this overconfidence is going to cause his house great pain, but when it does, you can be assured that the Count Itzel will not be humbled. Okay, so let's have a look at these guys. So that's these guys here. Okay, so they're on Northborough, and you can see that these guys were an oddity. So they're up here in the north. They would sort of do some stuff with the Whispering Jungle, and that they are a Toladal house that is martial. Okay, so a lot of the Toladal are small little creatures. They're very, big with political power and religious power, or arcane power. But this particular house, Bardulph, is a martial Toladal house. But they got that way not through sort of, being honourable, but by winning. Okay, so very cunning fighters who use their size, agility, and smarts to outdo their opponents. Cool. Okay, so let's have a look here at another house. So this is House Bard. So Bard was a tiny house up here. Okay, right along the edge of the Whispering Jungle. Cool. Okay, so let's read them. So the family head is Lord Asriel Bard, a Keltoran. The memories of House Bard are carried through the generations, with each new lord forced to relive their betrayal by House Lagos. For Lord Asriel, these wounds are as fresh as if they were just made. Uriel Bard. Before the formation of the King's Alliance, House Bard controlled a large and prosperous kingdom in the far north. They were a strong and well-educated people, with a large and well-trained army. A perfect kingdom to join the King's Alliance. When the armies of Katla marched north, House Bard conferred with their neighbours, including House Lagos, House Rubus, and numerous other houses that no longer exist. House Lagos, ever the savvy manipulators. So this here is House Lagos. Convinced the other nations of the north that they should value their independence and resist the tyranny of Katla. But in secret, Lagos sided with the king's alliance and turned on the traitorous and primitive House Bard. House Bard stood little chance and were forced to retreat as they watched their former ally steal their kingdom. After House Bard eventually surrendered, they were given a small sliver of dangerous land along the border of the Whispering Jungle, acting as a wall between the now large kingdom of Lagos and the monsters of the Forbidden Jungle. Yet House Bard survived. Their lands were lost, but the survivors were forged into something greater. They became experts in battling the Nephilim and the Druids, and the survivors who made it to Stronghold after the Great War are considered legends for their combat abilities and hardiness. Though they lack political capital, House Bard has made a name for itself among the vanguard, as their expertise against the Nephilim is unparalleled. The kingdom practices a Tadai meditation. The kingdom's practice of Tadai meditation is still alive and well within House Bard, allowing the house's leaders to commune with their ancestors and access their memories. This practice allows the skills and wisdom of each generation to pass on to the next, but it also reinforces their ancestral grudge against House Lagos. House Lagos underestimates House Bard, considering them to be insignificant and powerless, a mistake that will surely cost them. Okay, so this is House Bard. They once had a big kingdom up here in the north, and when the armies of Katla marched up to them, basically Lagos convinced all these houses, we should unite and stand against them. But then Lagos betrayed them and used that betrayal to join House Katla, swallowed up Bard's kingdom, and pretty much sent the survivors to defend their border against the Whispering Jungle. So Lagos didn't have to deal with that. So Bard, being Kaltorans with their ancestral memory and especially meditation, feel that betrayal very, very strongly. And so House Bard, let's see if I can find them on here. You watch it. I'm gonna struggle with this at the moment. Look, I can't see them. I'm not actually sure they have a place. Cool. Okay, let's keep pushing forward. So, okay. So the next one here is the Boone House. So, Boone is here. That's where they were. Okay. Boone. Family head, Lord Ephraim Boone Kaltoran. There are none as diabolically brilliant and as doggedly persistent as the scholars of Boone, both when crafting deadly contraptions of war and when driving home a lesson to a stubborn student. Count Varus Boone. The Boone household ruled an awkward section of northern land. I'm going to bring this map up here. I think that's better. That was plagued by regular floods and volcanic activity. Very few lived in the land during the dawn of the King's Alliance, thinking it was cursed by angry gods. But Katla gave the land over to a prominent Kaltoran commander who had distinguished himself in battle. The Boone family was quick to unite northern refugees, southern immigrants, and a few local villagers under their banner. And in the centuries that follow, the people of Boone increasingly realized that they occupied an underappreciated, fertile, and exotic land that could be tamed through technology and knowledge. House Boone funded the development of grand schools that attracted the children of many distant noble families, especially those of Kaltoran descent. To be educated at a Boone school was a powerful status symbol that would guarantee a prosperous career in any major city. While they did deal in alchemy and religion, the most distinguished of all Boone scholars were their engineers. These gifted craftsmen were not only responsible for flood, preventing dams, earthquake-resistant housing, and harnessing the thermal energy of volcanoes, they were also the builders of great monuments that crowned every prominent Boone city. Greatest of all these monuments were the ocean pyramids of Judah and the clockwork arena of Asher. Despite his young age of 16, Lord Ephraim Boone is respected for his gift of management. The Boone family was quick to recognize not only the doomed state of Pole's Rest, but also the dangers of becoming embroiled in the current political situation. They have removed themselves from Stronghold, choosing instead to hire out their services to the politically inept leaders of the northern cities, Count Chimalair Elpis in Lockdale and Count Itzilu Baduf in Northborough. The Boone family is building up their resources and biding their time, waiting for the opportune moment to claim valuable land around the Arcane Bay. For they know that the true rulers of this new world will not be the ones who retain power in Stronghold and Pole's Rest, but the ones who secure and rebuild the outside world. Okay, so we have a look at these guys. So you can see here that this is the scholarly house. So after the King's Alliance was formed, you had this land here that was really inhospitable, and the King of Katla, as a reward to one of his commanders, gave him the land. Okay? And this guy pulled in some refugees and outcasts and united some of the local villages and tribes and stuff like that together and formed this land here. But it was the hardship of the land that forced them to be clever, because they needed to be clever to be able to survive and prosper there. And especially being Kaltorans, good for passing on memories, they sort of distinguished themselves a lot in scholarly and especially the engineering fields. And in this new world, rather than claiming a town or a city for themselves, have sort of working to assist other lords. So you've got Elpis up here in Lockdale, and then you've got Northborough here. They're a militaristic leader here, but these guys kind of help him run his city and build it into a stronghold. And then you've got a really useless leader here in Elpis, and they're assisting them out. They're kind of taking this sort of really long view of how they are going to prosper and thrive. Cool. Okay, so that is the Boone house. Let's have a look at Burdragon. Okay, so we're starting to get into some of the much more prominent big houses here. Okay, so Burdragon, they were here. Okay, in the Old Kingdom, and then let's read about them. Okay, family head is Baron Apollonios Burdragon, former Count of Stonevale, Legion. Listen carefully, my boy. The reptilian mounts of the Black Knights are as merciless as their masters. They will bite off the hand of any who try coaxing them with food, trample any that stand in their way, and spit acid upon those who startle them. Best to give both a wide berth, and drop their food in the trough when they're not around. Ajax Hayatl, Raptor Keeper. As a military arm of House Katla during the days of the King's Alliance, House Burdragon and their infamous Black Knights earned a reputation for merciless brutality. Their loyalty to House Katla has served them well, giving them much prosperity and power. Their enemies, and especially House Veldis, call them Katla's hatchlings, in reference to their house's subservience to Katla. But few would dare utter this phrase to their faces. The Black Knights of Burdragon are legendary for their ruthlessness and martial power. No force in history has ever held their ground against an open blood raptor charge. House Burdragon has a long history of keeping various raptor species as mounts and pets, breeding them over many generations for size and ferocity. Most famous of all are the massive blood raptors, named after their bloodstone desert homeland where Burdragon waged a constant struggle against the fearsome Drasong Twy clan. During the Druidic War, House Catler abused the Black Knights, using them as fodder to secure their own escape, a slight which Lord Apollonios has not forgotten, but keeps quiet. For their bravery and sacrifice, they were awarded a prime political position within Stronghold and maintained one of the great keeps along the wall. Their reputation secures their power, and for most, a simple glare from a Black Knight is enough to make them back down. But House Veldis views them with contempt and sees through this mirage of intimidation. Baron Apollonios is jealous of the good reputation and political influence that House Veldis enjoys. He wishes to advance the station of his house, but with the loss of his land in Stonevale, little political savvy, and ever-tightening Catler purse strings, he has been unable to find a way forward. Ultimately, House Burdragon are mercenaries, despite their trappings as knights. And if it were ever revealed that the wealth of House Catler was failing, the Black Knights might quickly find a better sponsor. Okay, so this here is House Burdragon. We're here, heavily allied with House Catler, which was the ones who started the King's Alliance, and, big legion that ride these massive, reptiles that spit acid and all that sort of stuff. Big Black Knights, very brutish house, who gain most of their power through their alliance with House Catler, okay? Who's basically funding them, okay? But then, they have a strong rivalry with House Veldis. And we'll get into them in the future. But these guys are basically they're really well-polished and highly respected, cunning Kaltoran knights, okay? So you've got these two military houses. You've pretty much got the honourable house and the dishonourable house, and a rivalry between them. And House Burdragon once ruled Stonevale, but they lost Stonevale when the dragon Langarum took it over. And now they are one of the sort of houses in Stronghold. Not the ruling house, because that's Catler, but they're sort of like the right hand to them. Okay, cool. So, I'm not going to do House Catler at the moment. I feel like that's enough for this video. But, yeah. So this is House Catler. They are the ones who started the King's Alliance. They are the ruling, the house. But we will deal with them next time. I hope you guys found this video interesting. Just doing like giant big lore dumps. The goal is to sort of fuel your imaginations of the different sorts of houses, okay? Maybe your House Burdragon, the big scary Black Knight Legion, or a scholar from Boone, or a You Done Me Wrong from House Bard. It's kind of that ranger type of anti-Nephilim guys. Or the Tolato cunning sort of dueling Badulf. Or the Attaway, who are the blend of two different cultures, very nomadic house. Or the slightly wild priest from Apollonios. Oh, okay. Take care, everyone. I hope you have a